Yo, what's going on, dudes? HK Titan here with a brand new video for you guys, and in today's video, we're going to be turning one of the easiest maps in Bloons TD6 into an expert map. So the beginner map that I chose for today's video is going to be the map Resort. So I chose Resort because I was looking at it and I'm like, you know what? I think I can actually turn this into a expert map because I have a couple of ideas from like making my previous builds, and I think I have a pretty solid idea of how to turn this into a little bit of a harder map. So of course, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to choose our background, and I'm thinking I want to choose the water background, and then I'll like add the land and the beach and all that stuff. That way the water has a little bit more texture with like the waves or like the bubbles that come with this map here. Now the next thing we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to choose the first layer, which is going to be an area, and we're gonna make the area out of sand. Now the reason why we want to add sand is, of course, on Resort there is a beach aspect, so I kind of want to like layer the areas so it goes water, then sand, then land. All right, so we have the like little water areas set up. Now I made the water a little bit bigger so you could like maybe fit like one monkey sub or two monkey subs down here. Because like I was saying, I am turning this into an expert map, so I do want to give the players a little bit of an advantage. And on top of that, because we're kind of like lacking with props that would like kind of make Resort look a little bit better, I am going to be like incorporating the land a little bit further into the actual map itself, just to add a little bit more detail and add a little bit more flair to our map. Now with like the wavy pattern I'm going with here, I'm just like randomly choosing it. Like I'm not like going off of anything else. I just want to like kind of like make it kind of blend into the sand part, and I think this will look pretty solid. Now another thing we're gonna have to keep in mind is that we do have a pool that we have to add here. So when we add the pool, I think I want to add the pool after we add the pathway. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the pathway right now. All right, so this is going to be the basic layout for Resort. So I have 4 different pathways here. So if I remove all of these pathways, the first pathway is just going to go straight across. So I think this would be a little bit of a interesting concept with this map, and it shouldn't be too hard. Like if it was just like straight across, obviously that would be a little bit difficult. But because we have like the pathway split up and the balloons will like go like between all 4 pathways, it should make it a little bit more reasonable to have this like straight across pathway. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to edit the path 2 a little bit. So actually, why did pathway? Why are there multiple pathways showing? That's weird. Okay, so pathway 4 for some reason ended up showing up. Oh, I think it's because I had it selected. All right, so with pathway number 2, I want this pathway to kind of have a, I don't even know how to explain it, but I want this pathway to go along here like this, and I'll have it exit. Wait, no, it's going to enter over here, drop down here, and it's going to come over here, and it's going to exit on this side of the map. So I thought that would be a really challenging part of this map. Instead of just having like the map circle around, it'll like have you think a little bit more with like where you want to position your towers, because if you don't position them correctly, then the balloons are just going to end up slipping by your defense if you have it like positioned right here. There we go, and I think that looks pretty solid for the second pathway. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the third pathway. I'm going to go ahead and leave pathway 2 up, but that way we can like kind of line this up a little bit better, because we need to line this pathway up with the second pathway, as well as we need to line it up with the first pathway. All right, so this one's going to be a little bit more tricky. There we go. So we just need to line this up correctly, and if we're able to line this up correctly, this should look pretty solid, right? Now, of course, the hardest part about this is like getting that square look. Now, I do have an idea of like adding like props along the pathway to like kind of make it seem a little bit more closed in, like the actual Resort pathway itself, but I don't know if that would look good. Now, moving on to our 4th and final pathway. So this is another one that's a little bit different. So it's going to enter over here as well, and then it's going to come down here. It's going to come over here, up here, and then it's going to exit over here on this side of the map. So I thought this would be another little bit of a fun like design to this map, because I think it's really interesting to like have balloons come from a different side where you normally wouldn't see the balloons on like this normal map. Then of course we just have to do our best to like try and line these pathways up as best we can. There we go, and I think that looks pretty solid. Now one thing I'm thinking about changing with this map is I'm thinking about changing this little water feature that's normally on the map. Like, I think it looks cool, but if we make it so that this is just a normal water feature, then we might run into a little bit of problems of not being able to have enough popping power in order to deal with the balloon. But then again, I do think this would be a little bit easier than the normal Resort map, because I think you can actually fit more towers in this little area. But you know what, guys? I think I actually want to keep the water area. But with resort, the water area is actually like one of the staple parts of this map, so I don't think I can get away with actually removing it. And then with this area, I am going to have to add a couple of props in order to like make it blend into the pathway a little bit more. So in order to save me a little bit of a headache, I'm actually going to make it so this area is pretty much right next to the pathway. That way I don't have to worry about like not having the corners and all that other stuff. And I think it'll make the pathway look a little bit better. But because I'm using this little bit of a cheat, I am going to have to go through and I'm going to have to make a border around all of the pathway. Otherwise, it's going to look a little bit weird. The only question is, which prop would look the best for like a border? Like, I was thinking about it, and there's a prop that I thought would look pretty interesting. Like, what if we use these? And we turned off the animation and we just made them like really small. Now, because resort really doesn't have too many props, and the props that it does have, we really don't have in the BTD6 Map Editor. Like, it has like a sandcastle down here. They have like benches here. We do have the umbrellas, so that's something that we can add. But in order to add a little bit more detail, I think this is going to be the best thing that we can use is going to be this prop right here. And then what I'll do is I'll trace around the entire pathway with these like little squares. And I think that'll really make our pathway look good. Now, the trick with this is I want to keep a little bit of distance in between the small squares. That way it looks like this is like man-made. Because if we like just like position them on top of each other, I don't think it'll look as good. So this is going to take me a little bit more time to actually make this, but I think the end product will actually be worth it. Now, the only problem with like moving these props like this is that when you're actually moving it, the props still have the animation effect. So like trying to like line them up perfectly is pretty much impossible. So each one is going to be spaced out a little bit differently. There's not really too much that we can do about it. So that's something that when you're like looking at this map, that's something that you need to keep in the back of your mind. Like, yeah, there's still going to be a little bit of inconsistencies, but hopefully when I place them all down, it'll look pretty good. Oh, and thank goodness that actually lined up quite nicely. Now, these top ones, I need to be really careful that I don't have them too far apart, because as you guys can see like the blue underneath it. So hopefully that doesn't end up like being too weird. And then I'm like noticing like more and more like these two are a little bit too far apart. So I need to drop these ones down a little bit. There we go. Like, just dropping them down a little bit is going to make them look a little bit better. And then, like I was saying, these ones up here, I don't think are going to look perfect because, with, like, these ones, you'll have that, like, little black effect. But with these ones up here, I'm not really able to like have that black effect, so I just need to like place them as close as I can, and hopefully you guys don't mind there being a little bit of blue on underneath it. Now, I would add another prop, but there's really no other prop that I think would look good next to these, and that would like mean going over the prop limit. Like right now, I'm like kind of like pushing my luck by trying to like by trying to turn this entire map into like a official version of resort by using these little squares. So hopefully you guys don't mind a little bit of blue. And then when we get down to the sand part, it's going to have a little bit of yellow in between these. And like I was saying, hopefully you guys don't mind that little bit of like off color a little bit. But then again, it might actually be something that only I notice, unless somebody but then again, like this could be something that only I notice, and then like somebody who's actually playing on this map just isn't paying close enough attention to actually like notice like the blue underneath. Because if like you're just like looking at this map would look pretty good just by itself, or at least I think this idea would look pretty good just by itself. All right, so we're gonna run into our first issue. I'm gonna have to work with this pathway a little bit, so I think that's gonna be pathway is it 2? 3. So this is going to be pathway 3. And I need to, wait, no, it's not going to be pathway 3. Yeah, it is pathway 3. So I need to edit this, and I need to make it so it kind of like intersects with this corner a little bit more. I think I have to make the pathway a little bit smaller in order for this to work. The only other thing that I could do is I'd have to move all of these over to the left a little bit more, to fit another one underneath this. But even if I did that, like the pathway would still like pop out. So if I made it a little bit smaller, would that make it a little bit easier to like make it blend in a little bit more? I think that's gonna be as good as I'm gonna get it. Oh man, like I hate how it like automatically like repositions to like the center of your mouse. It makes like making like small like fixes really hard. All right, now I need to fix this up here because it looks a little off. And then hopefully you guys don't mind the pathway being a little bit, dude, if I make it a little bit smaller, I'm gonna have to make them all smaller. Dude. And then when I like do the inside of this pathway, I'm gonna have to make like the little boxes a little bit more squared off. What about if I add like, oh dude, that's way too big. What if I turn this pathway big again? All right, hear me out. If I make this pathway big again, and then I add like a stamp layer, and I add a stamp underneath this road, would that look good? And then I'm gonna take this stamp layer and I'm gonna make it so the stamp layer is underneath the path. Like it's not perfect, but once I add the boxes up here, that should go away, right? Yeah, so there'll still be a little bit of shade. So I'll have to add a little bit of shade underneath all of the paths to add a little bit of shade. Oh, dude, that's gonna look so cool. All right, yeah, so I'll keep that. All right, so that's one dilemma down. So by adding the shade around the entire path, I think that'll make it look a little bit better. Maybe I'll have to like add a like little bush here to like kind of like take away from this corner. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue with this tedious task of placing down all of these squares around the entire map, and I'll bring you guys back as soon as I'm done. Alright guys, we are almost there. Just a couple more. Oh dudes, I have literally been placing these square blocks for the last half an hour. This took so long to place all of these blocks. It's actually redonkulous. And now we need to go ahead and like fix this up here. That way they're a little bit more lined up. And oof. Guys, that took way longer than I thought it would. Like, it literally took me a half an hour to get all of these blocks placed. And the entire time, I was, like, worried that I would be hitting the prop limit because there's a lot of squares on the map right now, guys. And on top of that, I still have a lot of different props that I want to place to add a little bit more detail to our map. So, I think that looks pretty solid. I need to fix this pathway because this pathway is just a little bit too far up. And then I want to go through and I want to add that shade underneath my pathways as well. Path 3, I think it might be path 3. No, is it path 2? Path 2, yeah, path 2 is the one that I need to fix. All right, so I need to lower this down a little bit. And I think that will look a little bit better. Yeah, cool. All right. So before I go through and I add the shade behind this entire map, I want to go ahead and place down the props that I want to add first. So the props that I want to add first is I want to add a little hut here, kind of like a life shack, because we don't have like the table, we don't have the like lounge chairs that we can add. So I thought by adding this, it would add a little bit more detail in the center of the map where there's usually a little bit more detail. So along with that, I'm also going to grab myself a couple of umbrellas, and then I'll place like a little bench here. So with this little bench, we'll go ahead and make it a little bit smaller. I will rotate it like this, and we'll like throw this bench like right here, and then we'll like throw an umbrella behind it as well. Does that look good, or should I do something else? Now, in case you guys are wondering why I placed the shack, because I mean, the shack would kind of act like a concession stand or like a lifeguard shack or something like that, because we really don't have too many props to choose from when it like comes to like props like this. And I was thinking about it, and instead, I think I should add these chairs down here instead, because we do have like on the actual map itself, there are a couple of like benches here, and I think we should add like a couple of benches down here to add a little bit more detail. There we go. And then right now, like this shack looks a little bit out of place, but I do have a couple of things that I want to add a little bit more detail, right? So we'll probably add like a couple of potted plants, or we'll add like a couple of boxes around the shack to kind of make it blend into the map a little bit better. Maybe we'll like raise this up a little bit so it's over here on the green side. I think that would make a little bit more sense, right? And then we'll have like a little pathway going from like the grass over to the sandy area. I think that would look pretty good, right? Now, obviously, it's not going to be the same as like resort, because of course, like I was saying, we don't have as many props as they do on resort. So we have to like make up for the fact that we have the lack of props by adding a couple of different aspects. So one thing that I know we have that we can add, we have these two umbrellas that we can place over here. But I want to make them a little bit smaller, because I mean, right now they're bigger than like this little shack. So I want to make them a little bit on the smaller side. And we'll also add a couple of umbrellas outside of this little shack here. And this will add a little bit of extra detail, which is what we're currently lacking over here. I'm also debating on whether or not to add a couple of umbrellas down here. I think we have to, right? Because the two benches out there just looks a little bit weird. We'll add like a couple of umbrellas behind these benches like this. And I think I'll have to add like a couple of rocks next to these benches to add that little bit of extra something. Now let me go ahead and find a couple of boxes. We'll place a couple of boxes and stuff around this hut here, and that'll instantly bring a lot of life to our map. And then you know what? Another thing that we could add to add a little bit more detail is we could actually add light posts. We'll add these light posts at random spots throughout the map, and they'll act like a little bit of like a barrier. But it'll also add a little bit of extra detail. And I'm just going to add them in like the corners of like the pathway to, like I was saying, to add a little bit more detail to our map. There we go. And that adds a lot of detail to our map, which is what we're currently lacking, right? Now, what can I add in front of this house? Like, what if we add like a couple of like bushes like this, just to add a little bit more color and a little bit more detail in front of the hut? And then let's add like the long bush along like the side here and along this side as well. But first, let's go ahead and add these boxes too. That way we can like add a little bit more detail in front of the shack. We'll add like a box here, and then we'll also add like a box not there, because I mean, can't really see it there. So instead, we have the one box here, and then let's also add like another box in the back here like this, kind of like somebody dropped off a bunch of boxes behind the hut. There we go. I think that adds a lot of detail to our map. Next thing I want to do, I want to go ahead and add those bushes along the side of the hut as well, just to add a little bit of extra detail as well. And then also, I'm thinking about adding the bushes along the top here on top of that. So if we add like this bush here and we make it go along the entire top of the pathway, I think that'll add a lot of detail to our map, and it'll make the map a little bit harder, right? There we go. And that adds a little bit of extra detail to our map and like kind of pulls our map together a little bit more. The next thing I was saying, this is going to be the bushes that I'm going to add alongside of our hut here. And this again is going to add a little bit more detail to our map. Now the reason why I'm going with like these big props is because I'm worried about the prop limit, because we've used a lot of props on our map so far. So I want to make sure that we don't end up hitting that prop limit before we get like a majority of the detail placed down, right? There we go. And that added a lot of detail around the little hut here. Now, another thing we can add, I'm debating on what I should add in front of the house. And I think just adding a couple of rocks would end up like adding a little bit more life to our hut. So let's go ahead and do that. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to add a couple of flowers in the grassy area as well, just to add again a little bit more detail. There we go. And just by positioning these two rocks here, it almost looks like a doorstep to the actual house itself. Now, I was looking at something and I thought it would look really interesting. Like, what if I added a couple of bushes along this pathway here? And the bushes I'm thinking about adding, I just noticed them. They're up here towards the top of the props, and this one right here. Like, what if I like made these really, really small, and then I added these shrubs along this side of the pathway? And I don't want to add them all the way across because we still have these props here that we need to think about. And then what if we added like a couple more over here as well? And then we add a couple more over here on this side too. There we go. That's instantly going to add so much life to our map and so much detail as well. So let's go ahead and add the flowers too. There we go. And I think I really like the way that that looks. The flowers like really bring our map together, guys. And then what I'll do is I'll add some shade along these props up here to add a little bit more detail to this up here. And then I also think I'm going to add like a little bit of greenery inside the pond here. Now, obviously it's a pool, so I don't want to add like lily pads or anything like that because it would be a little bit off. But there's nothing wrong with adding a couple of like leaves inside the pool because I mean, sometimes like leaves will get in the pool from like different like trees and stuff. So adding a little bit of leaves, there's nothing wrong with this. Like it's almost like the pool cleaner hasn't been there to like clean out the pool in a while. And then let's also add a couple of starfish down here as well, along the beach. Add a little bit more detail down here to the water. That's way too many starfish. Like unless it was like Starfish Cove, like there's no way there would be that many starfish along the water. I think that's cool. I actually think only 2 starfish would end up working out. So yeah, we'll add 2 starfish. And then I want to add the shade around all of the props before I start going through and adding shade around the actual pathway itself, because I want to add the shade around the pathway, but the only problem with like adding the shade is like I'm worried about the prop limit again, guys, because we have to be getting extremely close to that prop limit. Also, I was thinking about it and I kind of want to add a couple of these rocks in front of these benches too, because the benches look cool. They just look kind of out of place, right? There we go. Now they still look a little bit out of place, so I think I'm gonna have to add something else behind them to add a little bit more detail. Maybe like adding a couple like birds or a couple of pigeons. There we go. That way we have a little bit more life on our map. All right, now I like all of this. I like everything that we have going on here. I think it looks really, really cool right now. But right now, like this giant sandy beach, there's just not enough going on with it. So what can we add to add a little bit of life to our sandy beach? Maybe we can add like a couple of these clovers. Nah, I don't think the clovers look good. But maybe we add like a couple of like a little bit of grass, like coming through the sand, like over here, and then over here as well. And like it's like a transition from like the grassy part into the sandy beach. I think that looks like a solid transition, right? And then what else can I add to the sand? Like I want to use stamps because again, I'm a little bit worried about the prop limit. What about like using these as like seashells? I almost want to add like a palm tree down here as well. You know what? Let me go ahead and add the palm tree too. Just because again, I feel like it's kind of lacking in the bottom of the map. So if we add that, or if we add a couple of palm trees, that's really going to bring a lot of detail to our map. So we'll go ahead and add like a palm tree over here, and then we'll also come over here and we'll add like a couple of palm trees down here as well. And actually we can use this palm tree to like cover up the mistake down here. Yeah, that looks so cool, and it covers up that little imperfection as well. But one thing I didn't notice is I'm gonna have to like move these starfish over a little bit. There we go. And I can actually use this tree down here to cover up that imperfection too. Dude, that helps so much with like it taking away from the corner there. Now we still have this corner up here. What if I like filled in a little corner with like a pigeon? Like just go about it like super like obvious, like, and we'll make it like a super fat pigeon. No, dude, no. That's a little bit too cheesy. All right, so let me go ahead and place this pigeon down again. There we go. And now I'm looking through my map and I'm trying to like find like different things that I can use in the sandy parts, but there's not really too much that we can use with the sand, right? Like we could add these, but these would make more sense along like the grass line, so that wouldn't work. What about like these little like black dots? The little black dots, don't really like those. Like I was saying, I think the only thing that we could really add to add a little bit of extra detail are these like small rocks, and then we'll like position them randomly around like the map. But we don't want to add too many, because if we add too many, then it's gonna kind of look a little bit awkward. All right, but I think for the most part, I think that's gonna about do it for the map. Now let me add shade around all of these props, and then we'll go through and we'll start adding shade along the pathway as well. Because again, I don't know how close I am to that prop limit, and I don't want to start adding shade around the pathway until we get the rest of the shade placed down. And speak of the devil, there's that prop limit, dude. We were so close to the prop limit. limit, and now it's saying max items reached. Hopefully I can still play my map. Hopefully I didn't go over the prop limit too far. All right, cool. So I think we're still in the clear. So because we hit the prop limit, we're gonna have to be really selective about where we place down like shade. Obviously, I'm gonna place a little bit of shade there to kind of like take away from that corner. And then I need shade around the house. And then I also need shade under the umbrellas. And then let's also add a little bit of shade underneath. God, dude, we hit the prop limit again. All right, let's remove these two birds up here. I think we can get away with like removing one of these flowers like this. No, we need those flowers really, really bad. So we need to position these flowers a little bit better. That way they look like they take up more space than they actually do. And then let me go ahead and get rid of the rocks right here, and then the rocks right here. All right, and then what else needs shade? We don't need shade underneath the lampposts. We have shade. We need a little bit of shade underneath this palm tree here. And then I'd like to put a little bit of shade underneath the benches too, but I don't know how easy that'll be. All right, I'm looking, and I think that will about do it for all of our like shade that we're adding around the map. I would have liked to add shade along the top here, but I don't think we can get away by doing it. And I think that'll do it for our map, dudes. Like we might as well add like a couple more flowers if we still have a couple of props left that we can place, right? And there it is. That was the last prop that we could place, is the last little flower bit there. But all right, dudes, I think this looks like a pretty solid map. It took me so long to place all of these little square bricks. So let's go ahead and give our map a try to see what our map looks like. All right, so we have the error where we can't play our map because we went over the prop limit. So I need to erase a couple of things until the prop limit comes back. Maybe I'm gonna have to delete this bench down here. Let me go ahead. We'll get rid of these two pigeons. There we go. All right, so I only had to get rid of one. We'll go ahead and like rotate this pigeon like this, and then we'll move this pigeon over here, because whenever we hit the prop limit, we're not allowed to like actually play our map. All right, so I think we're good. So if we save and exit our map, we should be able to play it. There we go. Cool. All right, so now let's play our map. All right, so look at all of these different pathways, dude. Like the more I look at this map, the happier I am with the way that it turned out. So I think I actually have a little bit more room in this square than there is on the normal like resort map, but that's actually perfectly fine. All right, so let's see how this expert map of resort is gonna look. Okay, it's gonna take a second for all of the balloon or all of the spikes at the end of the track to go through. Like we probably won't get any balloons from the left side for quite some time. Yeah, like this side is still popping balloons with the spikes at the end of the track, but that's perfectly fine because I really like the way that this turned out. Yeah, so we have balloons coming from both sides. So this left side is actually the pathway that we're going to have to worry about the most, because this pathway goes straight through the map. So if we aren't able to pop these balloons before they go straight through the map, then unfortunately we're gonna lose. Yeah, dude, this looks so cool. And honestly, I have no idea why I positioned a tax shooter here, because this tax shooter would only be able to hit one pathway. So instead, let me go ahead and upgrade my dart monkey instead. But all right, dudes, let me know what you guys think of this expert version of resort. Like, do you guys still think it's a little bit too easy, or do you guys think I instantly made this map way harder than the original resort? Like, obviously it's not going to seem too hard right now because I am playing on easy standard mode. And if you guys are new around here, the reason why I play on easy standard mode is because I'd like to challenge you guys to see if you guys can actually beat this map on Chimps. And if I played it on Chimps, then you guys would have a solution for Chimps, so it really wouldn't make too much sense to like ask you guys to beat it on Chimps. So would you guys rate this as like a beginner map? Would you guys rate this as a intermediate map, a advanced map, or an expert map? Now, me personally, I think I would put this in a ballpark of an advanced map, because I mean, it's still a relatively easy map, especially since the balloons are divided between like two sides. So I don't think it's like super hard, but I definitely do think it's a little bit harder than a beginner map, right? And I'm super upset that I couldn't add more detail up here at the top of the map, because originally I wanted to like add like a bunch of shrubs along the top here to add a little bit more detail and kind of make it a little, or kind of make like this I guess like brush or like bush blend into the map a little bit better. But unfortunately I wasn't able to do so because of that darn prop limit. And even though we did hit the prop limit, I'm not like super upset, because I do really like the way that these like little squares look going along the border of the map. I definitely think it was worth it to put in that little bit of extra effort in order to add this border along the pathway. because that really makes this map stand out. Now, unfortunately, we did have these like 2 little squares over here and then down here as well that we really couldn't do much about. Like, I was thinking about what I should have done, but if I would have like moved like the lamppost like in this little square, we could have like dealt with this little square down here, but I think it would have looked a little bit too weird. So that's why I didn't like really add like the lamppost on the inside, because again, I don't feel like it would have blended in as well. And also, while we're finishing up this map, again, I just want to say thank you guys so much for the support on the series. You guys are absolutely crushing it. If you guys have an idea for like a different map that you guys would like to see me create, such as like a beginner map into an expert map, or an expert map into a beginner map, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. And if it sounds like a really cool idea, I will definitely make it happen. And also, it's time for the YouTubers shameless plug. If you guys are enjoying this series, make sure you guys hit that like button. Also, if you guys are new around here, don't forget to subscribe as well, because I do upload daily BTD6 content, and it would really support me as well. But anyways, dudes, now that we have officially beaten our map, now the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and name our map. So let's go ahead and name our map Resort 2.0. There we go. So I think this ended up turning out really good. The only problem is like it looks a little bit weird in the thumbnail, but there's not too much that we can really do about the thumbnail. Hopefully people like really don't notice it too much, but even still, like I still really like the way that this map turned out, even if the thumbnail does look a little bit wonky. So if you guys would like to play this map for yourself, here is the code. But anyways, dudes, again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you dudes in the next one.